Hey, Richard, welcome.
Thank
I'm
you so much for having me, Larry. It's so good to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about my favorite topic, which is how do you live successfully self-employed? How do you build a company that's lucrative as well as stable? It's extremely challenging. And the point of these conversations is to help people understand how to do that from hearing it from people who are actually on that journey and have
Yes.
gotten from a point A to a point B. And I think the beginning of the conversation is just, you want to just tell everybody kind of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about what I'm doing right now. Maybe that's the best start point because there's a number of versions of Richard along the way to get here.
Right.
So at the moment, my focus is I help people specifically with conversion. So that may be from, say, content on LinkedIn or social platforms, but also it's in general from any relationship or connection to a deal and how that looks with specific consideration to the nuances of interaction and cues and communication. And that's, best part of 20 years in doing deals in various guises. So my accelerated program focuses really on how to get people to want to step forward rather than chasing. And so once you've got attraction, what conversion looks like, that's where I spend at least most of my time.
So if you go back a few years and you think about how you got to today, where you've got a successful business doing what you just said, what was the moment where you realized that something had to change for you to get to that point where you recognized that that was what you wanted in your life, but you didn't have it yet?
Yeah. I think what it was it was probably like 6 years ago or so, 5 or 6 years ago, when I felt like I didn't have that kind of offering. I didn't have like I didn't have clarity on offering to a degree on the people I was targeting, but mostly in terms of like, here's the thing I do. And it was like, for want of a better description, it was like, I'm helping people not do something silly when they start their business. And the lean is towards closing deals because that's my background. And I'll just kind of point them in the right direction and help them, with common sense. And it felt like, to a degree, a bit of a hamster wheel. And I was, I had clients each month and I was being paid and I was coaching them, but there was no like thing that I like did as a flagship product that was like my beacon, that people were like, yeah, Richard's the guy for that specific thing, or as I call hyper niche. So in not having that, I felt probably that after, because I'd been at it for a couple of years, I started this really in 2013 when I left corporate. I felt like I've been basically enjoying learning a bit of process around what kind of online consulting coaching looks like and dabbling with content and so on. But for the first time, I started feeling like I was looking up from the page and going, really, this for year after year after year is not a sustainable thing, because it's not as lucrative as it could be. More importantly, it's not like this repeatable, scalable thing. It's great. You can close really well and you can attract people, but I'm just kind of like constantly just this guy that has people show up for calls. And that was like, it was like, I can't be doing that in 10 years time. So something needs to be more robust as well. That was kind of the thing. A number of other
It's a
pieces,
big
right?
insight. I think there's a misunderstanding often about self-employment, and people end up solving the wrong problem because they have that misunderstanding. So the problem is your business lucrative enough?
Yes.
And is it stable?
Yes.
And obviously, are you doing the things you really want to be doing,
Yeah.
the only way you can see that is you say no to clients you don't want to work with.
Indeed.
So that's a must for the business
Yeah.
to really be successful. So what I'm hearing is you figured that out. You recognized that you weren't there
I agree. Yeah.
with your business, but you're successful and you had capabilities.
Yes.
But then you go to product. So most people, I think of hyper niching as messaging. and like
Yeah.
understand your audience. How did that work?
I felt like I kind of knew who I liked working with, which was the ambition and talent and positivity that comes with people in those early stages, or the people who are working for themselves who are very, very invested in the success of their service or company, because they kind of tend to be the one running it. So I kind of felt I had a sense of the niche, and it was like, I'm the guy that can help people with their first sales and like what that looks like. I'm good at, my background was sales management and directorship and coaching people to be good at that. But I just felt that there needed to be a kind of a package, and a package would mean I had clarity on the proposition. Because when you have a clarity on who you're targeting and with what, and of course why, then it means your messaging is so much it becomes a bit like, it becomes fairly effortless, because you don't have to think, how am I going to court people in the right way and so on. It's everything kind of stems from, here's the proposition that can really help. And of course there was development needed, in the sense that I could always be agile and tweak my product or offering based on what people wanted. But in the main, I felt if I had a clarity of the service and the offering, that would help me broadcast to the market better, where I'm able to be of value. And it was, amongst a couple of other things, a major step change in terms of people. Do you know what it was? Is people, I could feel, this is a feeling, because you don't measure it like by each person, but you could feel people were going, got it, I see what you do now. And yeah, the outcome or transformation it has that kind of clarity. Like the vagarities had been lost, which was what I was aiming to get, I suppose.
So if someone has a capability and they're bringing that into the market and they're doing okay, how do they know the problem is the product clarity then? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think what you want to be asking yourself is, take a temperature check on those that are incoming, or those that you are speaking to. And if you're doing content right, you should be getting inbound. That's crucial, right? And that's something you cover in your world as well, Larry. But you've got to ask yourself, like, if I'm getting inbound, do they all tend to at least loosely get it in terms of what it is I offer? If you're having to explain yourself quite a lot to different people and they have different angles on what you do, then that is a really important kind of data point for you. I tend to find now that for instance, at time of recording, my accelerator has 84 people in it, right? So 84 small businesses and companies, that's a lot. And to do 84 deals, you have to do probably getting on for 200 calls if you're good, right? So 200 proofs of concept, 200 people. And it's interesting that very rarely does someone not get what I'm doing, which means I'm broadcasting properly. So like, that's a really valuable start point. Ask yourself, if I've had 5, 8 calls or meetings or pitches or whatever in, say, the last couple of months, even if it's that kind of lower level, do they get it to begin with? Have they been primed through my content? Are they primed through a sense of what I do, that they're like, yeah, I understand you do this thing? Because if they're all coming at you from different angles, your message is the bit that's probably wrong. So it requires removal of ego to a degree, but I think that's a really important start point. A lot of people don't think to check that, because they understand it, they presume everyone else should as well,
I think you made an important comment there of removal of ego.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people misunderstand what that really means.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you my
Yes,
take on it, and I'm curious to get your feedback on your own experience with it. So to me, ego is about being right. It's about needing certainty. The reason people want to be right is they need to feel certain.
Yes.
And we're as people who work for ourselves, we have to get really, really comfortable with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
a lot of uncertainty, and we have to pay attention and be fluid in our thinking. So what I hear you saying is one of the reasons you become successful and were able to successfully do this is you got fluid enough in your thinking where you weren't embedded mentally or emotionally with a particular product idea.
Yeah, and actually we should go further still. I mean, firstly, you're right. I mean, ego in this context is us basically presuming or assuming we are right about what we're offering. And I'll borrow someone that from someone that people absolutely love to revere in this kind of space, which is Elon Musk, who
Yeah.
recently has been documented as saying essentially words to the effect of, you should expect that you're wrong. And most things people suggest to you will all, like, even in your employ, will also be wrong. The question is, like, can you find the one or the answer that is least wrong? But he acts as though everything is broken. And I remember also back in 2016, I was in touch. I was like really trying hard to get advice from top people as well. And there was one guy called Martin Terrell, who was an ex-managing director of Amazon UK. He became a C-level at one of our big supermarkets here, Tesco. And I asked him, what would you say about this kind of thing? And he said, if it's not broke, you're not looking hard enough. And I loved that attitude, which rather than the ridiculous idea of it's not broke, don't fix it, it's right. An assumption there's a problem or it's wrong. And what that drives is this importance on an iterative view of your product. My accelerator in August will be 2 years old. So there's already part of me going like, how do we level it up to the new level? How do I make it no longer a 2020 product and then a 2022 product? Always layering new things on and testing. Like the fact is, I thought I was right when I started it, and now I look back and like I was still right, but now I'm more right. But I need to recognize that I'm probably not as right as I would be in another year from now. And so how do I access being more right, as opposed to close all stimuli out and presume I'm right absolute, and that's the end of it? Remember Nietzsche, right? Conviction is the enemy of truth.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I totally agree with it. And for my Revenue Climber expedition, the first phase is evaluation, which is to identify your reality. And the second phase is called Ready, Fire, Aim.
Yes.
And it's a beginning of an iterative process based on market data collection.
Yes.
So it becomes a habit, as opposed to thinking the answer. So I think you are talking deeper and broader in a way, and the specificity of that is in action. It's the scientific method. So I think that's
I must pull on the point you just made there, because Ready, Fire, Aim sounds like this glamorous thing that very confident people do themselves. It is a roadmap for success, in my opinion, because it drives action and being on the pitch, and not spectating rather, and conjecture, because it is very dangerous to take what I've just been saying, for instance, and say, right, so if I'm not going to be right and I'll need to iterate, that's going to give me the excuse to sit back and stay in the workshop and work on new versions of the product. That is wrong, because the only way you improve the product is through feedback from the market, not through you believing, even through courses and books and so on, that you can help improve your product yourself. It has to be from the market too. So it's essential to get it in hands of people and see how they respond to it and improve accordingly. It really is. I'm not ever wanting to let anyone have what I'm saying is an excuse for holding back, giving it to the market. Make it look ugly, but make it work at least, and take it from there.
One of my beliefs is there is no workshop. It's that the workshop is the market. And
even better, yes.
And I know from my own experience of I've done positioning work for over 100 software and tech service companies, and one of the mistakes that I made was I did it with them.
Yes.
With their information, and their information's wrong.
Okay.
Because they're not the market.
Yes, true.
It's so you developed your product, I'm hearing, from the market. You were in the market, recognizing first people weren't getting it right away. So then you have this gap between they don't get it right away to getting it, which you get there. You close that gap. What did that process look like then?
Well, there's a number of kind of ways in which you find out. So firstly, just ask, the number of polls and questions I've asked through content, for instance, is unreal. I've rolled out so many products through first asking what would it look like if this was something of interest to you? And if it is of interest, the second one being something like, so what about if it had these components and people voting with their feet? And then of course, I've just got myself a bunch of leads as well, but it does mean that I can say, so I've built it with you, you know, built with the audience in mind, and in fact involved in it. And also, you know, you can go further still. You can simply learn through hearing or seeing how people respond to, when you're a bit more advanced, to your pitches. You know, when you're speaking to them, are they getting it? Do they, what bit, like take a mental note, what bit do they continually tend to like? One of the standout benefits I've found of, this is not a sell, just an example, but of my accelerator, is that almost invariably, if I look at the calls I've done, and the thing that stood out the most, irritatingly, isn't the course that took me 2 months to build, Larry. It's actually the fact I'm present. And the thing that made people really, really stimulated by it and like go, yeah, the course, great. But the fact you're saying you're going to be there to answer questions rather than some VA or proxy, that matters to me. And so that allowed me to go, do you know what? I will make this part louder then. And so I'm paying a lot of attention to the conversations I've had and I'm having. Basically, a really good rule of thumb here is, to answer the question, is if ever you're broadcasting in any way, any element of the ecosystem within which sits your service or product, you should be looking for how people respond to it, because that is feedback. And even if you don't agree with how people respond to your offering, the fact is they're right, because whatever you want them to believe is kind of irrelevant here. How they receive it and project their understanding of it is the bit that matters. So, you know, if you want them to see product X, but they all see product Y, then you've made product Y as far as they're concerned. So they're right with the set of knowledge that they kind of are working with.
Absolutely. And that's an entrepreneurial trap, where people have come up with the best new thing in the world and they're going to go, you know, evangelize for that.
We should still have pride, right? And we should still get, you know, balls, like really kind of bold with our offering. We should believe in it and so on. But we also need to recognize that agility and a willingness to improve atop of your talent that you put into the center of this is a superpower. It really is.
I think it leads to a potential misunderstanding, and I'm curious to get your take on it, but I think we may be somewhat like-minded on this. Right. One of the modules that I put together is around motivation and purpose, and it's because I'm of the belief you don't position your product, you position your motivation and your purpose. So that's the idea of personal branding and so on. And I'm wondering how, where is the let's call it, I guess, the stake in the line, you know, the non-negotiable. So I'm this and I do this, and I don't care what you say, this is what I do.
Yes.
How do you think about that then? Because you're not going to change everything based on market feedback.
Absolutely right. And so you need to, it's kind of interesting, because I've got to delicately describe this without sounding immensely arrogant and narcissistic.
Oh, go for it. You're a successful guy. Why just—
Thank you. But what's really important is all along the way, we should be deciding, so this is a conscious thing, deciding how we receive the information we've just been describing. So in the last 5 minutes, we've been very clear that the market is valuable for feedback. However, in terms of the offering, the market is not the expert. It's just the market showing its propensity to buy, as opposed to knowing the depth or granularity that you're offering as a service or product. So we need to decide, in what way are we going to listen to the market? Because the market may be conveying to us that actually they need it to be, it's the format or the medium of this product that needs changing. But if they are going to scrutinize our talent and experience, which is perhaps the very essence of what we're offering, we need to take that with a pinch of salt, because you may be requiring the market to do something that they're uncomfortable about. Let's pick an example. Maybe I'm going to coach people how to make great video. And so I might get a natural pushback from the human beings in the market, which is a natural one of, that's not right, I don't want to do that, because it's something where there's fear. But the fact is, they might be very valuable, and I pay attention to the fact that they take issue with how I deliver a program, for instance. But there's another layer here, which is other people you might listen to, perhaps peers, but more those above you and those who you could really learn from. And it's not that I disrespect those offering advice, but I'm very, very careful to listen to the very, very top. So I mentioned a chap who worked with Amazon before, and I actually did a post recently with direct advice, because I literally asked them, what advice have you got, from 6 people working at billion-dollar businesses? And like, that stuff's worth listening to. And everyone, everyone will have an opinion. It is very rare that when you ask for advice or even don't ask for advice, that someone who is underqualified will say, do you know what? I don't actually know the answer, or I can't give you any advice or feedback. Most people were like, I don't know. Well, based on common sense, I think you should do this. And everyone's well-meaning, but they will often give you advice you shouldn't necessarily listen to. So everyone in the world could give you something to kind of take on as feedback. So you need to be careful. Who are the ones I'm going to lean into listening to more? And have they earned the right to give me that advice? Like, let's see the evidence of their success. And if I don't believe in it or buy into them, go search elsewhere. But then hear that market and ask yourself, like, are they challenging the essence of what I'm doing? Because if they are, then maybe I may take a view on that. And perhaps I may choose to almost disregard it because I'm coming with, for instance, 18 years of experience doing this one thing really well. And unless they're the expert above me, then I'll challenge that, or at least not absorb that feedback. But it may be they're giving great feedback in terms of how you deliver a course in general or something like that. So it's one of those, it's that thing, know your strengths. Was it Peter Drucker, Managing Oneself? I can't remember if it was, I think it was him that wrote the book. William, I can't remember the name, Salman, I think it was, who wrote that book, Managing Oneself. So the crucial thing is to know what you're good at and what your strengths are and what areas maybe you could improve. It might be that you've got an amazing skill set and really talented and really can have impact, but actually the platform you use to build it, it's trash because you have no idea about building a website with good UX. So that's maybe good feedback to listen to. So that's hard to articulate, but I hope that gives you a sense of it.
It does. I think that more conventional wisdom is usually not helpful because we already know all the conventional wisdom. We're looking for that slice of the market that is innovating to really do the same. You mentioned something that's, I think, can be a problem for a lot of people. So you're seeing, the issue that you had to get from here to there, where you wanted to get from where you were to where you wanted to be, was product clarity. Put the right product together. You did that through an iterative process and mindset, opening your mind, get the information in, and make adjustments, but be careful who you listen to and all that. It makes a lot of sense. As you kind of, work through that process, then you realize that, who your specific market is. And as you realize who your specific market is, part of the coaching world is you're introducing change for them. How do you recognize within your product how far you can go and push people through transformation? Does that have to do with the market you find, or is there some other equation around that?
I think the most helpful advice here is to recognize that that's a slightly moving target and that will evolve and change. And what you need to do when you first build the thing is say to yourself, what I feel is probably the big transformation is loosely probably about right. Okay. And that's your start point, and be okay with that level of uncertainty. It's the same as deciding what your niche is. It's like bordering hilarious when I see people running a workshop with someone who's starting a business, and it's like, fill out this worksheet and you'll have established what your niche is. It's like, no, you haven't, because that's all conjecture. Hypothesis. Exactly. It's a hypothesis and it's a possible. But the fact is, just not to belittle it too much, the fact is that what you're doing here is saying, probably this is about right. And what happens is that big transformation is what you lean into to begin with. And I genuinely believe it's between 5 and 8 proofs of concept. So 5 and 8 clients that either solidifies or more likely shows you where you should be. It realigns you slightly. So it's like you build the product and you say, I think that that direction there is north. It feels like that's north. Then you do 5 to 8 clients and you go, actually, I'm about 4 degrees off from about there. And you tune it and you tune it and tune it. So I really know where the big transformation is for my product now, because I've got so many people who've joined it, and I've gone through that process a lot. And I know exactly what their main frustration is. It's always the same kind of thing. There's a bell curve of amount of people who have the same issues, and some random ones at the edges, but you refine over time. So broadly speaking, you need to go in saying, I kind of think this is the big transformation. This is where I think the scope probably will go. And that's you leaning into your experience. And the very reason you're building this product in the first place is you should have some sense of what you're doing. But you'll know over time from feedback from your clients, but also from the continued learning you do, that actually I could go further, I could go bigger. And to give you like a really good example, there have been people who've gone through this and that they'll be like, the level of results I thought they'd get, they've gone up here somewhere. And I'm like, okay, so the scope is big. Actually, wow. And it broadens your mind, because actually it's not always the same outcome. Sometimes it's far superior, depending on how well the person takes it and runs with it. So that is not what people want to hear. What people want to hear is,
they want a pill.
X plus Y equals Z. And like, it doesn't work like that. You need to recognize that you're probably about in the ballpark, and massively be willing to embrace the fact you'll probably need to change it after 5 to 8 people. And this is not a sit down and write it out in an essay kind of process. This is a feeling. You're feeling, and then you'll articulate it over time again and again, and you will hone your philosophy on where this product can take people and the kind of outcomes possible. Evidence helps a lot. So that's why volume is crucial. It's good to have a number of clients giving you that kind of feedback of what's possible. And again, this is kind of this continual feedback loops in through the whole process. But I don't want people to feel like it's complex. This is about being on the pitch, getting in front of people and feeling how they respond back, if that makes sense. I'm sure some people you probably got guests in here who can kind of quantify this kind of stuff, but I'm a feel guy.
Yeah, I think you got to go with it. If someone is very quantitative, you go that way, get the data and analyze the data. And you have to do things you'll do. So I wouldn't put someone in a heavily quantified model if that's not who they are.
Exactly right.
And then there's people who can't do the feeling part. They need the data, and they have to think about it and analyze it. And I think that's an important lesson for the audience about how you do this. But this isn't the point, really. The point is knowing that this is what you need to do. This is the framework in which how you have to think to come up with a successful company, and that iterative approach and market feedback and how you take that information to create that product is really important. And there's another, so we've got a couple more minutes, and I want to end on one, I think, really important comment you made also, which is about scaling. I think it's a huge mistake to build a business that requires you to work one-on-one with people. But it's not to say you won't work one-on-one with people. It's just that you can't trade time for dollars.
No, it doesn't work.
And ever build a successful, stable, lucrative business.
Yeah, the 84 people all come to that group chat if they want to. They can come to the group chat each week, and that singular hour is always the singular hour. And if I had 3 million people in it, it's still the singular hour. It wouldn't be. It would need to be more than one session. But the point is that like it's very simple, it's very streamlined, and it's not too intrusive. I still do one-on-one, absolutely, because it's very lucrative there for all of the scale. There's always a few people at the top of it who are like, do you know what? I want more. I'm being a bit selfish. I want you to myself. So I have 5 to 6 of them in a month. Like, so I have 1 call a day pretty much, and that's it. And I think, but it's the way you see, if you go back 5, 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, certainly it would be 13 people that I was doing one-on-ones with every week, and that's exhausting. And you've got to physically be there all the time. So it's just, having something that you can scale in the right way is very valuable. But it doesn't mean that's the only thing you should do, because if you enjoy one-on-one, do it as well. That's what I like.
Yes, absolutely. I think these insights are tremendous, and I hope this is helpful to people. I know it's helpful to me. I learned a lot from you,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate your time. So if anybody wants to find Richard, he's all over LinkedIn.
Yes, yeah, do find me there. I'm quite happy to answer any more questions.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again.
You got it.